I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, August 29th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Proven efficacy at an affordable upfront price without the BS. End of story. Go to macrocin.com to find head-to-head comparisons against Pioneer products. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyard is going to be starting at 7 o'clock here Monday morning. I got about 5,000 head, which is a pretty moderate run for them, and they've been having fairly moderate runs here lately. But for you producers that's going to have calves to sell this fall, and maybe you're not a big producer, you're not going to have big bunches of calves, and Joplin's a big market, but they can help you out. Bring them in on Sundays, and they will commingle those cattle with other like producers with like cattle and make bigger bunches of them, and those cattle sell right up at the top of the market. They feature them at the same time every Monday morning, and the buyers really get used to buying them, and they give them a one-shot vaccine there that that definitely helps out, and the buyers even pay for that. So it's a good program. Start thinking about that, guys. A speed bump, and the markets were lower this week, and we've been on a pretty good rally here for the last several weeks. You know, just this month, our fats had gained $7.50 on your weighted average, which is a big gain, and that was just over the first 3 weeks of the month, and that was just a lot all at once, and you know, we see that quite a bit. If your market's gaining a lot there, it's gonna take a breather. So we took a few steps forward and going to take a step back. Your feeders had gained about $9 through the first 3 weeks of August. Up through last week on your real-time index anyway, based on an 800-pound steer, which was a big gain. And of course, we saw a lot of prices that were a lot higher than that, and really smoky. But on your weighted average, you know, that would be your market for sure. But it's just looking at we're going to pull back just a little bit this last week. Not saying that we won't gain that back this week, but your buyers, both fat cattle buyers and your feeder cattle buyers, came in this past week just deciding that maybe enough was enough, and we've got these prices worked high enough, and they really didn't want the cattle at those price levels anymore, and they kind of did that in agreement. You know, so we're not seeing as much demand from your northern feeder buyers in the southern plains as what we'd had. We're not seeing quite as much of it. We're still selling them back east to the northern feedlot areas, but that's not going to last much longer. And there was, like the guys in Oklahoma said, there was fewer Yankees in the market on your feeder cattle this week than they had been all summer. So that's one reason it's pulling back on that, and we're starting to see the bigger premiums paid in the northern plains on feeder cattle rather than the southern plains, which there's always a pretty good disparage in there because the cattle are better up north. They're bigger bunches, they're more uniform, and so that's starting to become more important to your feeder cattle buyers. Your fat cattle, of course, we've been seeing a big difference between what your fat cattle are bringing in the north and what they're bringing in the south. We're still seeing that. It may not be quite as prevalent as it was here several weeks ago, but it's sure, you know, $5 or $6, $7 on a live basis on fat cattle, but still quite a bit of difference there, and they've just got more leverage to trade in the northern plains. Southern plains guys have all promised their cattle to the big four packers through some type of a formula deal, so they have no hand in the relationship, got no trading leverage, so it's harder for them to garner the big prices, and the packers are wanting the best grading cattle, and most of those are in the northern plains also, so that's why we're seeing that big premium being paid up there. This past week we saw the Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour come through the first 4 days of the week, and they did not like what they saw out there. The crops are not quite as good as what we had thought, and we weren't even thinking that they were all that great. But the crops in the Western Corn Belt damaged due to drought, and more so maybe than what we were thinking. Through the mid part of the Corn Belt there in Iowa and places, the crops look good, but there's damaged ears out there on your corn crop. And you go to the eastern Corn Belt, which looks fantastic, and they've had ample moisture out there. It's good, but maybe not as good as what they had planned on it being. So we did seek a pretty good charge for your corn market there this week, and of course that hurts your feeder cattle markets, and how that bleeds into fat cattle, I'm not always sure, but cattle are always looking for any reason to be bearish, and they found some bearish pressure there from corn, and that's has nothing to do with current fat cattle sales. They're done with the corn already. But wanted to give you guys some updates about the hard red winter wheat region. That they are sowing wheat like crazy as we speak. Be doing it this week. A lot of times they like to wait till after Labor Day, but Labor Day kind of runs late this year, and guys are just liking the moisture that they received. We saw big rains in Texas. In the driest parts of Texas, we saw huge rains, flooding rains in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Of course, they weren't complaining about that out in the country, but where it was all blacktop and no place for that water to go, yeah, it was damaging flooded rains there. But they needed the running water in North Texas and in all of Central Texas to fill the creeks and ponds and the water tanks for the cattle, because they had run bone dry, guys. But also got some more moisture up in the Texas Panhandle, in eastern New Mexico, western Oklahoma, southwest Kansas, places where they plant hard red winter wheat. And man, are they excited about that. They got some moisture. They had those fields plowed up just as nice as you please. I mean, looked like you could just fall out there flat and it'd be like landing on a feather bed. But they got those getting those planted. Doesn't take them long to plant them with the kind of equipment that we have right now. With that moisture there, if we'd happen to get some more rain here over the next 2 or 3 weeks, which is forecasted, we're going to have a really good start on some winter wheat grazing, guys. And for those of you that are out there sowing wheat, or you guys that are thinking about putting some wheat cattle together, talk to Ellison Carter Cattle Company, the shipper there out of North Texas, and he's just west of Weatherford there at Santo, Texas, and he gave me the rundown on what he shipped out this week. It's hard to find information like this. We appreciate this information. It's hard to tell you how cheap you can get some cattle bought for, because no sale barn, of course, wants to advertise that, but these are some cattle that he could send you, and these are delivered prices. There's several loads of them here. He had a big week. These are all delivered prices, mostly to the Texas Panhandle or Oklahoma, some to Kansas and even Nebraska, but I'll tell you those when we get to them. But steers and bulls you could order from EC Cattle Company there. 275-pound load of steers and bulls bring 219, and they'd be good enough quality, good enough to go anywhere, guys. 355-pound steers, a load of those at 201. Load of 415-pound steers and bulls at 194. Load weight 465 on the average at 188 and a quarter. Here's a load that are priced FOB. Somebody wanted to come pick them up in their own truck there at the pens there at Santo, Texas. 608 pounds on the average at 178. Here's a load of 611-pound fancy, all black, all steers, going to Nebraska, delivered price, 611 pounds at 191. How about some heifers? Load of heifers average 265 at 186 and a quarter. A load weight 310 at 182.10. Load of heifers at 355 pounds at 180 and a quarter. A load at 370 pounds at 179.75. Load weight 485 on the average at 178. Here's a load of plainer heifers, weighed 495 at 160 and a half. Load of fancy heifers, FOB, picked up at the pens, weighed 520 at 171.50. Here's a load weighed 600 pounds, blacks at 174, and a load delivered to Kansas averaging 675 pounds. Heifers at 156.50. Also buys turnout cows and things like that. Bought a pretty good group 3 to 5 year old cows. Some be open, some be short bred, averaging 835 pounds at $716 per head, delivered to the Texas Panhandle. So if you're interested in any of that, get a hold of them. Ellison Carter Cattle Company. Talk about your futures markets for last week, your cattle futures. August live cattle futures for Monday was down 37, Tuesday up 40, Wednesday down 30. If you're getting the idea that not much, just a little bit here and a little bit there, but not much. Thursday was down 22, Friday down 30. August live cattle futures ended the week at 140.80, just about mature there, down 80 cents for the week. October ended the week at 143.05, down $2.20. September feeder cattle moved on. August dropped off the board at 181.87 on Thursday, but September feeder cattle Monday was down 40, Tuesday down $1.90, Wednesday up 57 cents, Thursday up $1.22, and Friday feeder cattle down 2.05. Probably a lot to do with the interest rate hikes. Interest is going up, guys. They're talking about raising it some more to try to stop this inflation, which has been caused by the Magoo administration. And we have to get it stopped somehow. And I guess they're just going to keep raising these interest rates. Well, it's getting to be a player in cattle too. You know, costing 5.5–6% to loan borrow money for cattle, and that gets in your knickers after a while. But September feeder cattle ended the week down 255 at 182.20. October ended the week at 183.40, down 337. Your corn ended the week at 664.25, so it gained quite a bit of ground. And beans 1461.25. Those are both for new crop. Talk about your fat cattle market. Up through Thursday, they had sold 56,400 head in your 5-area feeding region. That's light. That's a lot lighter than what we've been doing here for the last several weeks, and every week this month so far, where we've been gaining market, and that's why I say the more cattle you sell negotiated cash, the better chance you have at a higher market, higher prices. The least, the less chance you have, and people can argue with me, but that's the way it is all the time. Talking about your live sales of steers and heifers in your 5-area feeding region, 141 to 148, with a weighted average on live steers at 144.54. That's down over $2 on your weighted average. Your price spread wasn't down that much, but your weighted average down over $2. So pretty big hunk out of our market there. Dress sales range from 230 to 235, with a weighted average on dress steers of 232.88, down just over $1 compared to the previous week's weighted average. And there's not going to be much change with the addition of Friday's information, guys, which will be all together here on our next visit. But Friday, of course, Colorado confidential. Iowa, 1,300 head confirmed on Friday. Just over 16,000 for the week, which is about half what they've been doing. But live sales on Friday at 147. And that goes to show you how your packers, your buyers of those fat cattle were resisting these price levels. They didn't want to give that. Well, they didn't get the best cattle then, because the guys that are feeding them, that own them, have them on the show list, they just decided to keep them. They'll grade that much better with another week of feed. Nebraska, just 200 head confirmed on Friday, 22,500 for the week. Live sales 145 to 148, and some dress sales on Friday at 230. Kansas had no sales on Friday, barely any all through the week, just 10,400. That's why they have no market, guys, because they don't sell any cattle negotiated. Texas didn't have any sales on Friday, only 8,600 for the week. Box beef cutout values were lower again, not a whole lot, but some lower again. Your weighted average on all of last week's box beef cutout values, box beef sales, choice cuts, $263.29 on the weighted average. That was $1.29 lower than the weighted average from the previous week. Your late sales on Friday were about 50 cents cheaper than that for the choice cuts. Your select weighted average on all of last week's sales, 238.22, which was down 21 cents from the previous week's weighted average. And your late Friday sales were about 50 cents higher than that for select. So just kind of hitting a spot here where the market's not moving a lot on your box beef cutouts. Packers would sure like to get those up if they're going to have to pay more for fat cattle, and that's another reason that we saw resistance to the market this week. Choice select spread just over $25, 586 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Had a huge slaughter this past week, a huge slaughter, one of the biggest we've had all year, and as big as we get them anymore. It's 678,000 head of cattle harvested. That is huge. Okay, they didn't buy many cattle this week on a negotiated basis. So as far as negotiated sales come this week, or the market on them, they're going to be short bought coming in. But hell of it is, they're buying for a short week because we got Labor Day coming up the following week. So that's just going to be a wash probably right there. But had a good 56,000 head day on Saturday. Like I said, 678,000. That's as much as we do anymore, guys. That is huge. You compare that with 661 the previous week and just 653 the same week a year ago. Our cattle slaughter so far this year is running 1.2% higher than a year ago at this point. Hogs at the same time down 3.5% compared to the same point a year ago. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction late in the day, or at the end of the weekend, actually on Sunday, sitting at 181. That was down 42 cents for the week. Coming to you here from Fort Worth Stockyards. Going to be attending a Vitalyx sales meeting here the early part of this week, so looking forward to meeting those guys and giving them a presentation and visiting with all those folks, and that should be a good time. Talk about your markets last week and your cash feeder cattle. It was split. Southern Plains were weak to $4 lower on cattle going right into the feedlot. We talked about that early in this report. Northern Plains were steady to $4 higher. So we're starting to get a big disparity between north and south yearlings. With the cattle in the south, the yearling cattle right now are on the plainer end. We've sold most of those better strings of cattle coming off the better grazing areas, and some of these cattle we're getting right now in the southern plains are plain. They're coming off rough, spotty pastures, or they've been pastured some and then put into some kind of a growing yard or something. They're not as attractive to the buyers as those green grass yearlings that we were selling back in July. Of course, your calves very uneven. Has to do with their condition. We've got a lot of balling calves right now. People still selling cattle due to dry conditions. They've had some rain, but it hadn't been enough, and the grass is not coming fast enough to help them, and they need it for the cows. They're selling calves right off, selling calves right off the cow, unweaned. That's making a big dent in our market there. And the calf offerings are pretty plain also. Guys just selling calves that are off cows that were bred out of sink or something like that. But where we see some really nice calves that are weaned, they'll bring a big price. But it brings about a very uneven calf market. Talk about some of your sales late last week. Fort Scott Livestock in Fort Scott, Kansas had 2,000 head there. They're not reported by anybody but us, and the market kind of looks steady to $3 lower, which is kind of the way we were in that part of the country. Did have a stick-out sale at Fort Scott on Saturday. 65 head, 845-pound steers bring 181.10, and that's pretty well the market, guys. That's really close right in there. Talk about your Zoetis stick-out sale of the day for late last week, and it was Burwell Livestock Market in Burwell, Nebraska on Friday. They had 2,700 head. Look at this automated market report from Cattle Market Central and look at the best tested weights there. You see some impressive quotes. 817 head of 8-weight feeder steers in Burwell averaged 861 with a weighted average price of 187.27 on all those 8-weight steers. 400 head of 9-weight steers in Burwell averaged 945 with a weighted average price of 183.62. Look down at the heifers. 417 head of 9-weight heifers. It's hard to get heifers that big, guys. And they had 417 head of them, averaged 950 with a weighted average price of 169.53. Talk about some individual quotes. Bluegrass Stockyards in Richmond, Kentucky on Friday had a good sale, had a lot of big backgrounded feeder cattle there, and some of them selling very impressively. Look at this quote out of Richmond, Kentucky, standing in the ring, 55 head, 1,006 pound steers, 1,006 pounds, guys, at 175. How about Winter Livestock Auction in Winter, South Dakota? They sold 64 steers, weighed 900 pounds at 188.50. And then how about your Mackerson? No BS, top quote for the day, late last week. Burwell Livestock Market, Burwell, Nebraska, sells 94, which is kind of a messed up load. It's too big for a load, not near big enough for two. 821 pound steers at 203. That's your feeder flash for Monday.